Lindsey Graham spent nearly 3 decades in Washington building a reputation that never fit into one simple story. To some, he was the old-school senator who believed politics was still about service, friendship, and compromise. To others, he became the face of a Republican Party that changed under Donald Trump. Both versions existed at the same time. And after his death, those two identities collided in a way they never had before. But was the real Lindsey Graham hiding behind closed doors? Or was his biggest contradiction sitting in plain sight for everyone to see? Most people hear the words, double life, and imagine secret meetings or hidden scandals. Graham's story was different. His contradiction played out on live television, inside Senate hearings, and across social media for years. Democrats who battled him still described him as warm and funny. Republicans praised his loyalty. Foreign leaders respected his support for Ukraine. Critics accused him of helping normalize Trump. Somehow, all of those descriptions could be true at once. And that's where this story becomes much more complicated. Long before cable news turned him into a familiar face, Lindsey Graham's life was shaped by hardship. Growing up in Central South Carolina, he lost both parents while he was still young. Suddenly, he found himself helping raise his younger sister, Darlene. Those early responsibilities forced him to grow up quickly. Friends often pointed to that chapter of his life as proof that he carried a deep sense of duty. But could those same experiences also explain the choices he made later in politics? After serving in the Air Force and working as a lawyer, Graham entered Congress in the 1990s before winning a seat in the United States Senate in 2003. He quickly became known as a strong voice on military affairs and national security. He was conservative, but he also enjoyed working across party lines when he believed it served the country. He wanted people to see him as more than another partisan politician. He wanted to be taken seriously. Yet even during those years, another side of his political instincts was already beginning to emerge. Graham respected institutions. He often defended the Senate itself and spoke about public service with genuine emotion. But he also understood something many politicians learn quickly. Staying relevant often meant staying close to power. He tried to balance independence with political survival, sometimes sounding like an outspoken truth-teller and other times like a loyal party soldier. At first, those two roles seemed manageable. Then Donald Trump arrived, and everything changed. But before Trump, there was another man who shaped Graham more than anyone else. That man was John McCain. Their friendship became one of the closest political partnerships in Washington. Together, they represented a Republican tradition that believed America should lead on the world stage through military strength and strong alliances. Whether people agreed with those ideas or not, they gave Graham a clear political identity. He traveled overseas, defended American allies, criticized hostile governments, and consistently warned about the dangers posed by Russia. Around McCain, Graham seemed confident about who he was. So what happened after McCain was gone? When Russia invaded Ukraine years later, Graham sounded much like the senator he had always been. He strongly backed Ukraine, pushed for tougher sanctions against Russia, and argued that Vladimir Putin had to be confronted. Even many of his critics admitted that on this issue, Graham stayed remarkably consistent. While parts of his own party questioned America's role overseas, he continued defending the same foreign policy he had supported for decades. But at the very same time, another relationship was reshaping his career. Back in 2015, Lindsey Graham had some of the harshest words anyone in his party directed at Donald Trump. He publicly called Trump a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He argued that Trump did not represent Republican values or the values of America's military. Those comments sounded final. They sounded like the kind of statements a politician could never walk back. Yet only a few years later, those same words would follow him everywhere. Why? Because his actions began telling a completely different story. After Trump won the presidency, Graham slowly moved closer to him. They golfed together. Graham defended him on television. Reporters frequently turned to him for insight into Trump's thinking. Each public defense created another reminder of what Graham himself had once said. Every interview became a split-screen comparison between the Lindsey Graham who warned about Trump and the Lindsey Graham who stood beside him. The question people kept asking was simple. Did Graham truly change his mind, or was something else happening behind the scenes? Some believed Graham saw cooperation as the only practical path forward. If he stayed close to Trump, perhaps he could influence decisions on judges, national security, Ukraine, or foreign policy. Many politicians convince themselves that staying inside the room gives them the best chance to prevent bad outcomes. But what if staying inside slowly changes the person trying to influence events? That's where Graham's story becomes far more than a tale about one politician. Trump gained something powerful by winning over a former critic. Graham's support became evidence that even outspoken opponents could eventually fall in line. To critics, that transformation symbolized a broader shift inside the Republican Party. Many leaders who once questioned Trump eventually adapted after he became the center of Republican politics. Graham simply made that journey more publicly than most. And because everyone remembered his earlier warnings, his reversal never stopped attracting attention. At the same time, Graham maintained one of Washington's most surprising friendships. Despite fierce political disagreements, he remained close to Joe Biden. Their relationship had been built over decades of Senate work, foreign trips, and countless conversations away from television cameras. Graham once became emotional while praising Biden's character, saying anyone who could not admire him as a person needed to do some self-reflection. That moment stunned many people. How could someone who spoke so warmly about Biden later become one of Trump's strongest defenders? After Graham's death, Biden's tribute reflected an older political culture where opponents could disagree fiercely while still respecting one another. Some people saw that as a reminder of basic decency. Others viewed it as another example of Washington insiders protecting each other regardless of political consequences. The divide revealed something important. Graham seemed capable of maintaining genuine personal friendships even while supporting policies many of those same friends strongly opposed. Was that admirable? Or was it simply another contradiction that defined his career? One area where Graham rarely changed was his view of Russia. Throughout his career, he consistently argued that authoritarian aggression had to be confronted. He worked with Democrats on sanctions and remained one of the strongest Republican supporters of Ukraine after Russia's invasion. His willingness to cooperate across party lines on that issue stood in contrast to the growing isolationist mood inside parts of his own party. Yet even that consistency could not escape the larger political struggle surrounding Trump. Could anyone separate Graham's foreign policy from the political alliances he built at home? In the final years of his career, Graham stayed deeply involved in debates over Ukraine, Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and American national security. He enjoyed being close to major decisions. He wanted presidents, generals, and foreign leaders to take his calls. He wanted to remain influential until the very end. But remaining close to power often required adapting to whoever held it. Under McCain, that meant serving within the traditional Republican establishment. Under Trump, it meant standing beside a leader he had once fiercely condemned. After Graham died, another wave of attention quickly spread across the internet. Old rumors about his private life resurfaced once again, including long-running speculation and jokes that had followed him for years. Some claimed people would finally speak freely now that he was gone. Others argued those rumors were irrelevant and should never overshadow a lifetime of public service. In truth, none of those unverified claims explained Graham's legacy nearly as well as his public record already did. The real tension had always been visible without relying on gossip. Supporters remembered a dedicated senator, a loyal friend, and a tireless advocate for American national security. Critics remembered his role in confirming conservative judges, opposing same-sex marriage, and defending Trump during moments they believed demanded stronger opposition. Ukrainian leaders remembered his unwavering support against Russian aggression. Democrats remembered both an opponent and, in some cases, a trusted colleague. Each group carried a different version of Lindsey Graham. Which one reflected the real man? One deeply personal moment arrived after his passing when South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster appointed Graham's sister, Darlene Graham, to temporarily fill his Senate seat. The decision carried powerful symbolism. Long before national politics, Lindsey had helped raise Darlene after their parents died. Decades later, she stepped into the office he had occupied for years. For many observers, it brought his story full circle. Family responsibility had shaped his earliest years, and family became part of his final chapter as well. In the end, Lindsey Graham's so-called double life was never about one hidden secret. It was about two competing versions of the same man. He was John McCain's closest ally and Donald Trump's loyal defender. Joe Biden's longtime friend and one of the Republican Party's fiercest political fighters. A champion of Ukraine who stayed committed to confronting Russia. A senator who warned Americans about Trump before helping many Republicans become comfortable supporting him. Those contradictions never disappeared. They simply grew larger over time. Perhaps that's why his legacy remains so difficult to define. Some believe Graham stayed close to power because he thought he could shape it for the better. Others believe he sacrificed too much of himself just to remain politically relevant. The evidence exists for both interpretations. His speeches remain. His votes remain. His friendships remain. His reversals remain. And together they tell the story of a politician who spent years trying to balance principle with survival until the two became almost impossible to separate. After his death, those competing versions could no longer evolve. They became permanent. The public was left to decide which Lindsey Graham deserved to be remembered. Was he a skilled survivor navigating impossible political realities? Or was he the clearest example of how power can reshape even those who once recognized its dangers? However history ultimately answers that question, one thing is certain. Lindsey Graham's greatest contradiction was never hidden from public view. It unfolded in front of America for nearly 3 decades, and only after his story ended did all the pieces finally come together.